Hey, what's up, guys? This is Worse back again with another band ranking. We have been planning this for who knows how long. I don't know. like, I know since we planned to do it, since we initially planned to do it, Sevendust came out with Truth Killer, their new album. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting because it's almost like I'm like wondering like what if no, there's a part of me that's like, what if our rankings are opposite? There's a part of me that's
Well,
thinking like because
Metallica was interesting. For those of you that haven't checked out the Metallica ranking, we had Old Head on, and it was great. That was a long time planned as well. It was actually a time when we were gonna do Sevendust before that, but then just because we were having a guest, out of respect for Old Head, we decided to throw that in front of that. And so, kind of the idea of these rankings, I feel like, because we have a list, and I'm not going to spoil the list for you guys for future episodes, but it's kind of in the sort of rhythm, I guess, of like older band, then newer band, and then. But Sevendust, I mean, I consider them an old band at this point, but Metallica obviously is way before
yeah,
them, and it just kind of like we're gonna try to fluctuate that unless there just like runs into like just these moments of like it's not a lot like don't know what to do next, so we just there might be some times where it jumps from like classic to classic again or whatever, um but it kind of mixes it up, and and let me just say like this right off the bat, like this the experience of like doing the rankings, like it takes time because me and Ryan have different schedules, and but we both consume music to a great extent, and love music, big music heads. Like this is kind of like where we can spew our passion about music. It's because we didn't really have another platform for it, so it was like Ryan's channel works. Um, but like it's a fun experience because I think we genuinely take the time to be passionate about getting it like how we really believe, and like and it's actually really hard. Like it's kind of a hard process because I mean there's days where like I'm listening to other music and I don't feel like listening to Sevendust right now, or Metallica or whatever it was, or the Beatles on our first episode, but there's times where it's like that, but I always come back around to it because it just that feeling of like, you know, um, like I keep wanting to do it. Like I keep the passion stays there. It's like, and it's kind of proved to me how passionate I am about like bands like this. Like Sevendust is like, I'll just say it. It's a band me and Ryan really like. We love them,
I'd say
and
they're off the top of my head. I'd say they're in my top 10
yeah,
ever, maybe even
and
higher than top 10, like
and
top five.
I've gone through all of them before, but this one with the addition of the new album and visiting newer albums that I did not remember what they were like, um, it's definitely that experience of like I've cemented even more like these guys are one of my favorites. We'll get there. We'll get into it. There's good and
Yeah,
bad. There is
there's
a
a
lot of
lot.
good and bad,
Yeah,
but I think, but to me, I was more excited about this than I was Metallica because Metallica was such a more unknown ground for me. Even though obviously I know the mainstream stuff, but it
I'm not as big of a Metallica fan, which I know that's you as well. So that was why I was excited to do it. I loved
yeah.
doing it, but they're just not like a big time favorite band. So I don't know. It was a different excitement for Metallica versus this. Like,
But mainly what I'm trying to say about that is both sides of the coin. Rather, it's something really unknown that I dive into and break down what is really, or a band that I already know. Either side is really fun. That's basically what I'm trying to say about that, and but also a very difficult experience because it literally depends on the day. And we've said that every episode in some way, and if any of you are watching or listening, whatever, that completely disagree with the ranking, that's what's gonna happen. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's some of you could listen to this band and just like, what in the world like is going on, or you're kind of like us and you have almost a little nostalgia. I also want to dedicate this episode to the Big Rob Theory, by the way, because he is one of the biggest Sevendust fans that I know. And sometimes, like when a new album comes out or whatever, I'll hit him up every now and then. Did you hear the new album? Or I remember when I forgot what the song. I think it's the last song on Truth Killer, which was interesting to me, by the way. That the very last song was the single that dropped to debut the album. I forgot what it's called, but
I think yes.
I sent him that link because I knew he was excited, and like me and him, it's just interesting how you just like know people that like are into bands you like, and you just can't have that connection. Whereas otherwise, there's not a lot else to talk about. Like it just like I don't know, but I just want to throw that out there. Big Rob Theory. Check out his YouTube channel. But anyway, we can dive in as always. Ryan goes first, and let me pull up my list because I'm ill prepared. But I'm telling you, like I have an overnight job, and like I'll call it this morning before I went to bed. Literally, I changed one more thing. That's how down to the last minute it was. I was like, bro, it's still changing. So that's what's interesting. But
I changed something 30 minutes ago.
Uh-oh.
Which is crazy because it was a big change. I was like, "What?"
Well,
like,
can we confirm real quick?
Man.
Let's make sure 100% how many we're doing. Like I just did because I know we discussed it through text, but just to confirm how many there are, because look at through Spotify, guys. Sevendust has a lot of in between stuff. Like they have a lot of one-off stuff or live albums or stuff that I was telling you, like retrospective 2 and stuff like that. That's like, but we always rank just the raw studio, very original version, never even the definitive edition, even though I wanted to. I wanted to listen to their original album definitive, but I was like, no.
So it's 14, I think, based on what I just counted, 14. But I couldn't help, for a very good reason. I could not help, and I know it's like nothing. I know it's not something you ranked, but I couldn't help. I wanted to rank Southside Double Wide Acoustic Live. I was like, I've never heard it. I'm just gonna like, so that'll be just kind of like an in between something I did.
Okay.
Like,
so 14 with that one. So 14 with counting
14
that one.
plus that one. So 14 is the official what we're both doing.
Then I'm missing one because I have 13.
Let me double count. Unless I counted something by total accident that you didn't. Very interesting.
Well, I'm glad I checked because that would have thrown off the number. Unless I just didn't, because sometimes when I'm moving stuff around, I copy and paste it and then erase the other one. What would it have been then? That's the only thing I'm throwing off.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is if you counted Time Travelers and Bonfires.
Oh no, because that's a.
Okay, I counted that. I
okay, that's why. That's why.
So okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I only didn't because isn't that just
really...
basically their songs again?
That
the
is
acoustic.
True. That's true. Okay, that's fine. So 13.
I mean.
Okay, so I'll
I wish I could say that I wish I could say I could count that, but I don't have it. It's fresh on the brain to count it.
I'll just do a side note for that one. But you did it right. You literally did it the correct way. So 13, Blood and Stone.
That's very interesting already. We're kicking off.
In addition to what I have thought of, I give too much thought to this stuff. I finally wrote notes. I actually have notes this time, so I'll read off the notes as we go. So 2 out of 10.
Lord.
completely weak. The production might sound great, but that doesn't save these songs from being incredibly boring. Regardless of what I think of the songs as a whole, LaJohn's vocals sound amazing as always. Yeah. Dying to Live might be the only standout, but I do appreciate the Soundgarden cover, Day I Tried to Live, but it does not save this album for me. These notes are like brutal.
It's funny because some I have notes for, some I don't. So the ones that I don't, it's just a flat out, I don't even know why. That's interesting. I won't spoil if I agree or not yet, but
But 2 out of 10 doesn't mean like a 0 or I would never give any of these like a 0 anything.
Yeah. I'll definitely discuss more of that when I get to Blood and Stone, but mine
I have a lot to say. We'll rank more, but I have a lot to say about New Sevendust. Like that's already like some like an opinion.
Makes sense. So my number 13 it's not what I here's the thing. This is not what I expected to happen at all. But even like when I was listening to them during working my last job, I just kept going back to this one. Like, I think that's the worst one. And it's not, and it's funny because I have a particular nostalgia for one of the songs. Let me actually pull up this album on, because I always try to look at the songs as we talk about them. So one of my first songs I have ever heard from Sevendust, and it was on the radio, and I don't know if I can count it as the first, because it might have been one of those things where that one was on the radio, but maybe I heard something else before, but the very first song I think, from memory, that I've heard on the radio from Sevendust is Driven. So my worst is Alpha. I have nostalgia for the cover of it. I have nostalgia for that song. I remember putting Driven, like whenever you download songs on your MP3 player. I remember like that being one of the first songs. I was just like, this band Sevendust. Like that's like early memories of like, I'm listening to classic rock as a child, and then into my early, little before in teenage years, whatever, I'm listening to another station that has early 2000s rock. And that's like my complete exposure to heavier music and just like, and that, everything you could think of, Avenged Sevenfold, whatever. Driven is, I still like the song.
I remember you showing me Driven. That's like a specific memory of you. We might have put it on YouTube, like loaded it up on YouTube.
But here's the thing, and I don't even know if Ryan remembers this. I remember, I didn't even make a note of it. I just somehow remembered to say this, like, but what makes it worse, and I haven't checked back in like, it's been a couple months or whatever, Driven doesn't work on Spotify when you play it. I don't know if you remember me telling you that, but the song right before it is what plays. So you just go to the next one, it's like twice. So, and maybe I could probably test it here in a second.
You did tell me that.
So that made it even worse.
That, but I didn't.
So that made it an even worse of an experience of my favorite song on the album won't even work. So like obviously we can like silence this part, but I'm just going to see if it works now. Just real quick, cuz I haven't tested this. It doesn't. I just think they dropped the ball on Alpha, and it pained me because I was like, man, I remember the Alpha, I remember that cover, like let's see, if I still. But maybe all along, even when I added Driven to like my MP3 player, maybe even back then I had listened to the album and knew like, oh, this is the only good song. Like, I don't know. I mean, and it's not like they're all terrible, but just as a complete collection of songs, I was just like, I was bored. That's the best way to explain it. Is just like, man, I was bored. And also, I want to say this too, because like just right off the bat, because I think people would just, I don't know. I like to take this into consideration. Like LJ on like every album is just, his vocals is fantastic. I don't know who writes for Sevendust. I assume he writes some, but there's probably deeper meanings in all these albums when it comes to lyrics that probably just hit really hard, but we're gonna miss them because like me and Ryan are neither one of us are as lyric like heavy people as we are in music. We go for the music, we go for the jams, but there were times in this experience, and I'm sure you did the same, where just like where I did think about the lyrics and I was like, wow, like there are songs that are like kind of disappointing in Sevendust that LJ has talked about in an interview or whatever that really means a lot to him or whatever. But I can always just tell there's so much passion in like what he's talking about. And they have a whole, I mean, they have so many albums to just, you know, just spit this stuff about just relationships or like what's going on or like in the world or whatever. But I always feel like I always hate to like not. I hate that feeling of not liking a Sevendust song because I know how much passion went from this band, you know. And I know I could say that about any band, but with Sevendust in particular is just one of my favorite bands because they have so much emotion in their music. So. But that was only number 13. But moving on, like I just had to talk about like how Alpha just was like, man, I wish it was better.
12 Alpha.
Dude, yeah, okay, there you go. There you go. There you go.
2 out of 10, still sitting at the bottom.
I think it's going to be more similar than you think, actually, this list. But I mean, probably not. But like I think as we get higher, but I think the lowers are going to be around the same area.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Almost their worst album. I swear, this album is completely devoid.
So you were one album away from matching with me on that. So yeah.
Even though Sevendust are one of my favorite bands, I have no defense for how this
No
sounds.
defense.
It still gets 2 out of 10 since LeJohn's vocals are great no matter what song he's on. At the end of the day, it's just bland, boring radio rock.
Yeah,
there is not much else to say.
That's probably the best way to describe it.
Basically exactly what you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's... And, like, for the next one, I have notes. For that one, I did not. Do you want to move on, or is that what... Do you want to talk about that one
that's... More? I mean...
Because, I mean, it's kind of beautiful the way we're able to just, like, kind of... Like, every time we get to one that hadn't been said yet, it's kind of like an overall review. Blood and Stone. So that when you said Blood and Stone at the bottom, I'm like, wait a sec. So literally, we just did a little list for those two. Just flat out boring. I couldn't attach to it. But my note I did leave was that Feel Like Going On made me emotional. So one of those types of experiences where this very special moment of you're listening to something and maybe on another day it wouldn't do that to you or you're just listening to it in the background or whatever. But I think I just had my beats or something. It was just a song that makes you think about life. Like, I don't know, it's very... I mean, the title in itself, Feel Like Going On, you know. Just LJ, just sheesh. I mean, just like killing it, and like I just thought about some things like in my life or whatever, and I ended up tearing up, and I was just like, dude, like that's beautiful, and even for an album that I'm saying is near the bottom, like it's like we're only gonna get better, but that, I guess I'm basically saying that one's my favorite on there. That it actually stands out above, like, all the songs, like, so much that it just belongs on another album. Like, that's how I feel. So that's to say that I found some enjoyment, like, you know, in something in there. But it's still, like, versus everything else that they have, it ended up on the bottom.
All I See Is War.
Oh, no.
2 out of 10.
Yeah, this is where we're gonna differ.
What's the notes?
What's the notes?
Down there with their worst stuff. Not a fan of this album at all. No song stands out with the exception of Dirty. Regardless, everything about this album is mostly bland and uninteresting. Still deserves at least 2 stars since LeJohn's voice is great as ever. Skip this one.
Like every album is gonna be,
Like,
but
I've got to say
LJ's
that.
voice
You
is
got to
gonna
say
be
that.
is great. Shout out to LJ, man. It's fun. It's just funny because like it's funny because if this for somehow get enough views, like he's the type of person that like I almost swear would see it because like he's so on social media like that. I'm like I almost thought about telling you before we even record the episode like we should just like link this to him on Instagram like just but it sucks because it's like we having to say so many negative things about your band, bro, and I don't like that because like we're such a big fan. Like he's such a he's
like,
just
if he
so
found
cool,
out,
bro. Like he's such a sweetheart. So
if he found out like Alpha was like at the bottom of somebody's, I think he'd be like, "Man, that's pretty cool." Like, he'd be like, "That's so cool."
I don't know. I just like, but anything else about All I See Is War?
Uh,
Obviously, we'll get to that. Where you're
I
able to
can't
kind
think
of
anything
break
else
all the
to
thoughts.
Really say.
All right, so like just zoom in. All right, so 11 for me, and this one stung a little because I remember listening to it like just back when I like used to mow dad's grass or whatever. I think that was the first time that I think that was around the first time I actually sat through Sevendust albums without just listening to songs. Like actually, so Hope and Sorrow. My notes were that the good things about this is Daughtry is on the past, Miles Kennedy is on sorrow. And it's funny because you don't know, this is back before I remember telling you this when you were riding with me in the car that one time, like, this is back when I guess they didn't just say that it's featuring anybody. I mean, even newer bands today do that now. Like, I would say that it's only a rap thing, but it's not just a rap thing. Like, rock does it too. So it's almost like they're trying to do secret cameos or something in there, but immediately Chris Daughtry is just like recognizable voice. Like as soon as I hear his voice, I know who he is. And I have nostalgia for listening to Daughtry as well, and that first album he put out. Like it's this is one of these albums where I feel like it's not horrible, but compared to what else they have, it ended up getting lower. So I think, I mean, we're still in sort of.
This is like the territory of like, if you were first getting into Sevendust, do not go to these.
Oh, and I didn't make a note about it, but I love Walk Away. Last song on the album. Even if I don't remember in the moment when we're talking about these songs, like it's like your brain, as soon as you read a song title, you like know what it sounds like or whatever. So it's like, it's memorable then. And like otherwise, but Prodigal Son, I remember that kind of being kind of good. But when you start out with like Inside and Enough, and it's just like, when you don't have a good start, it's really hard to like sit through the album. Like, but in our case, we do it anyway. But it's just like, yeah, just in that area of like getting better, but still boring. So that's it.
Number 10, Hope and Sorrow.
Okay, we're still staying similar.
2 out of 10. Another myth.
Another miss, and that's it.
This album, while not as bad as Alpha, is still a miss for Sevendust. There's no defense for how this album sounds. It's pretty boring.
There's no defense. That's such a you way to word something. There's no defense for this.
On top of that, it's not produced well at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't even talked about that, by the way. I haven't even added in, like, the differences in how the albums actually sound production-wise. And so this actually is one of those.
I wouldn't have thought of that in a moment.
So I feel like this next album is just, like, solidly even with Hope and Sorrow, but I put it above it. Cold Day Memory. This is one of those albums with that cover and stuff like that. Not like not my favorite cover, but one that I expected to be better. I think I really try. This was one of those where like I listened to all the albums and I would just keep coming back to Cold Day Memory because I'm like, but I would put it off just like you said with the other album where you put it. Like I think I might have even listened to half the album first and then been so bored that I moved on to another one and then came back for the whole thing again. Like because I just kept like what like I'm so bored of this one. Um my notes are mostly snooze fest. And I say mostly. And I said, okay, mostly snooze fest until Better Place, which is one of their best softies. Yeah, it's just mostly snooze fest is the best way to word it, and literally for me to say until Better Place, which is next to last. So bored until the end basically it doesn't scream good album to me. I think you really have to hook somebody with an album whenever you start. Doesn't mean put your best song first, but like kick it off, man. Like, yeah, anyway, moving on.
Number 9, Truth Killer.
Okay.
3 out of 10, so this is moving slightly up. The notes, not that great. Sevendust's newest album doesn't have hardly any standout moments for me other than Superficial Drug and Fence. LeJohn's vocals sound great as usual.
Every
And the
album.
production is excellent, amazing. But the songs are just not that memorable.
Mine is Seasons. My notes are. This is like, I don't know if this was the first time. I don't know. This isn't the first time in their albums, timeline wise, that they put out a melodic album, because Animosity has some melodic, and that's like their third, right? So, but I put more melodic. Like, I guess I was just saying, like, it's funny how like you don't even remember adding these notes, and you just at a moment in time you wrote a note down and you don't even remember saying this. But more melodic, some greats. Broken Down is an absolute favorite, and I think me and you both agree on Broken Down.
Yeah,
just
I
like we
fully agree on that.
like absolutely one of their best, maybe even in their top 5 to 7 maybe of Sevendust. So that's me adding a positive note to it. One of their worst album arts, because it's just them looking cool, like it's whatever. But it's one of those albums that like I wanted to, like, I feel like everything should have been more like Broken Down, like and it just like it's the example of like hope and sorrow, but it is getting better. Like Seasons is definitely like quite a big notch up versus like Hope and Sorrow. Like the flavor of like, okay, like this is Sevendust like around the time that's like in their prime, like kind of, and they just, I think I don't want to say that Seasons is boring because it's melodic. Like, I don't necessarily go to Sevendust. Like, I guess the first thing is like go to Sevendust because they're really good when they get heavy. I mean, sometimes not. Sometimes
what I've heard
not.
about Seasons, and I mean where it falls for me, you'll find out like my thoughts on this. I guess if my thoughts are affected by this review or whatever, like in a few places I was actually looking up different reviews for different albums because I'm like, what
Yeah.
would people even say like about Sevendust? Like, which is not something I normally do. I don't normally look up reviews of stuff, but I just was just doing, I was like, what could I do to really like maybe get extra thoughts? A lot of them said that Seasons was just them just fishing for singles, like fishing for radio hits. And what you
Yeah.
said basically is that. Like,
Well, like
you're
because
picking up on that, even if you're not thinking of that. Like, it's just kind of unavoidable with that album. Like,
right.
they're
Well,
just kind of fishing
what
for
I'm
like.
trying to what I'm trying to say is like nobody needs to think for a second that Trav just goes to seven. Like I'm more of the heavier fan. So like Trav just goes to Sevendust for the heavy stuff. Absolutely not, not at all. Because when they hit that sweet spot of when they get soft and I'm not bored and it's exciting and it's really good. And obviously LJ as usual is amazing because and so like when they get soft and they hit that sweet spot like Broken Down and a lot of other albums like throughout their time that like we're gonna talk about like there's stuff later and like I think it just like I don't know, it just didn't it best way to say it is it just didn't have enough spice in there like other than Broken Down. Like it's that same feeling of like I just listened to the album and then I'm like wait, what did that even sound like? Like, it just, like, immediately forgetting it. And I don't like, I hate that feeling. But then it's like, when you're listening, I can remember because I've listened to that album before. And I think I remember there being a time where Seasons would have been higher, but now it didn't age well. All right, I think, yeah, you're next. Yeah.
Number 8. Next. 4 out of 10.
I highly expect. I remember listening to Next, and I was like, Ryan's gonna have this on like the very bottom or something. This is, so this kind of surprises me that it's higher for you.
Oh, my review is not positive. Possibly their worst album up to this point. So like timeline wise,
Yeah.
none of the songs really hit me that hard. But why?
But why?
But why? The whole album is bland, boring, and just radio rock. The production is incredibly flat. I can't even tell you a favorite song because I can't remember any songs from this album, and I just heard it.
And I just heard it.
Not their worst, but man, this one is rough. They do have a little more energy happening. Like
yeah, it's an energetic album. It's definitely timeline wise when they hit this like. Okay, we're going well a wall, but like we're picking it up like we're going heavy again. Like that's like you know right away when you get into the album, it's like okay, and like I think it speaks a lot like it's not like my favorite album art or anything, but I love that this album is just red because it's like it kind of shows like
I love the cover.
Early 2000s like Sevendust is getting angry again. My next one is Truth Killer. And I have a lot to say about this because it's their new album and they it's like you said, there's no defense. Like it's like up to a point it's like there's no excuses for not being great because you have all these years behind all this, guitar tech and stuff you can do today and like just everything. This one's one that's like because it's the new album, I listened to all of Sevendust like over and over, I guess, before I was like, okay, I'm gonna officially touch Truth Killer. So then I had to kind of be fair to it and listen to it a few times. And I found myself going back to it and being more excited to go back to it. I definitely like it more than you. This one is an example of like they did not disappoint on sounding like brand new Sevendust. Yeah. And the reason for that is because they put out some of the most punchy riffs they've ever done. Like I was genuinely shocked because I was like, new Sevendust. Like I'm not gonna lie, I went into Truth Killer being like, this is gonna be a Blood and Stone situation. This is gonna be like, it's just probably gonna disappoint. So I mean, it's good that I kept my expectations low.
I think that's why I like it as much as I did because I was expecting Blood and Stone too, basically. So I was like,
because and the album track Truth Killer, like I'm not saying that I hate it. I might let the devil win, but I didn't really like that it started that way. It wasn't interesting, like, LJ just singing and
It's
like
like
just
a
kind of.
electronic.
It felt very like this should be in the middle of the album somewhere as like a filler track if you're gonna have it. But I mean, it's an like, I don't mean like every rock album's got to just hit you with like. I mean, I don't know.
99% of the
like
time, they hit you with like just
like
a riff.
like Fence is the last track. That would have been a perfect first track. When the guitar hits in this whole album, it really hits. I don't know how they did that. They just like fine-tuned their whole like just how it was gonna. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just a really bassy album too. And if any of that was turned down any lower, it'd just be a worse album. But compared to a lot of their older stuff that I actually don't like, I was like, this actually got up there. And I was surprised because maybe the first listen, I was like, I don't think it's gonna be, but it's definitely a special case where it grew on me to a great deal. It really grew on me. I love the new album cover so much. It's almost a poltergeist thing going on, but obviously, like, I love the yellow and stuff like that. I think the vibe of the album art fits the like we're kind of going heavy again. But being like all I see is war-ish melodic, so they mix in. So they do that balance of like they get heavy, they get melodic, and but it's not like my favorites. Anyway, that's that.
Number 7, Sevendust, their first album. 4 out of 10.
Only at 4 for something higher.
The notes, Sevendust's underwhelming debut. This is mostly mindless nu metal at best. Best song here, Black.
I mean, I guess at least it is higher for you because here's the thing about that album. Here's the thing about that first album is like I don't think we've ever actually discussed it together, like even off recording. So like we've always talked about like Black is just such a good like
that song is
what a fantastic kickoff to a band in general. Like they kick it off with that, and I remember when we saw them live. I remember that song playing, and then I think I even had to go back because I think the live performance was actually my first time hearing it. So that was really cool. It's very riffy, I still despise that it fades. Like, please just, like, have it end on a cool note or something, but no. Because that's one of those situations, the song is fading, and that's the best part of the riff. What are you doing? I'll get to that one in a second, but my my next one is next. I said not a great start. This is early Edge days, and for those of you that don't know, we have a radio station we grew up listening to called The Edge, and that is all this exposure. That's where I heard Driven. That's where I heard songs on this. So next is an album that like I was surprised with how much I didn't know what songs were really going to be on there. I was like, I don't know, but I got reminded of a lot of radio. It's perfect that you said like this is radio rock because I literally heard it on the radio. Like when Next came out, the Edge must have just played so much of Next because basically I said
and that would have been before I was listening to the radio.
I added like a question mark thing. I said, did they invent the early I put OOOs, like, so did they invent the 2000s sound? They didn't like invent it, but I'm just saying they were like, that was right when. It's interesting how they're a late 90s band that formed into the early 2000s sound. I'm not saying they were completely responsible for it, but they were at least one of my first, that sound that's like, that could still carry into today. like because I
Yeah,
mean because they
sure.
stayed sort of the same without staying boring and like the same. They just kept getting better with their production and I think Sevendust also falls into the problem of like they have so many songs that like I'm sure they sit down and make music and they're like now what like because it's like they've done everything. It's like that's hard. So and I think I really meant it when I said not a great start because now I'm trying to get reminded on what Hero's not a good that wasn't a good way to start it. But I've heard Ugly when I was a teenager. I love This Life a lot. It's one of their best. See and Believe, I know for a fact I heard on the radio. Like just that rhythm, just the lyrics and everything. Yeah, I just and I think this is one of those things where if I was hearing this album for the first time now, like without any nostalgic memory, it would probably be lower.
Okay. Number 6, Home. Slightly better than the debut. The production is much better. I mean, the production is really
Yeah,
good.
it's all of a sudden
Not
just
just much better,
completely yeah.
very good. But this album suffers from not having very many good songs, and it's long. Like that's well, long, but it's just a lot of songs. Denial, of course, amazing.
Yeah.
Underrated song is Reconnect, amazing. LeJohn's vocals, amazing. But I think my biggest thing, what I said, is that the focus is not on his voice at all. It's just strictly on riffs.
I think that's okay sometimes. Personally, I feel like I'm more easier on kind of songs that are just like, you know what, let's just be heavy and kind of I guess Sevendust's version of like let's party. Like there's like so it's like it's great for live. But this means top 6 for me, which is kind of surprising. So Sevendust 97. I think okay, so I remember when I worked at my last job and we officially started the process of like, okay, we're going to do Sevendust in the future. Let's, I knew how much I had to get into. So I started immediately, and obviously you start with 97. And I remember just listening at my last job, and I was just really enjoying, like, just, this is better than I remember as for, like, quality, just, like, what I'm trying to say with that is for a first album, they kick it off so well with this. Like Black and like I really love the riffs of Terminator and like it sounds like a late 90s, like you said, sort of new metal sound. Just like what I would call because what I imagine bands are doing when they're making these songs is like the definition of garage metal. Yeah. Like you are in a garage, and it sounds like that. It sounds like they're in a garage and they're just jamming, and like I don't know, but there's probably way more to it than that. And I had no note for this album. I remember just knowing like this is a great album to start.
Like it sounds like the guitar specifically, talking about Sevendust 97, the guitar specifically sounds great. Like specifically
for its time, yeah.
Everything else literally sounds like it's in a gym and you're like this far away from the mic.
Yeah, it's a fun album. I feel like I was just very well, and also it goes. You have to like. And me and Ryan are passionate about this too, about like how to listen to albums. Like, so I listen to a lot of Sevendust in my beats, and that adds bass. It adds so much deep quality to the sound. And I listen to a good portion of them in my really good car speakers. So that was special because literally anything else would have been worse. Like, I haven't been able to use my AirPods because one of them is just dead. One of the sides is permanently dead. So that was actually kind of perfectly timed because around this process, I just said, like, well, I still have my beats, so I'll just use that. And since I've had the JBL speaker, I've listened to a little bit, but I haven't had it long enough to but they sound best just in a good pair of headphones. I feel like that's where Sevendust shines. You can hear way more detail. Like, Sevendust has so much details in their tracks. Like, if you just, they're like, later on in time, they added ambient sounds and, like, different weird, like, they have some really cool intro type tracks, like, that aren't necessarily even intros to the album. Just what I would say is, like, this is, like, building up to them if they were live or something. I wonder what people thought about it when it came out, because, like, it had to grab somebody. Like, I don't know, just because this is like, especially for late 90s. I know there was a lot of heavier music coming out in that time. Like, the 90s is like when, like, heavier music started and Korn started doing their thing. And, like, I'm just saying, like, this is really heavy for its time. Like, just like, very interesting how it sounds the way it sounds. And, like, they've always sort of kept that flavor, though, throughout there. But then definitely gone more melodic now. But it's a transition. So I definitely recommend it to any. I recommend it as, like, go into their newer stuff, but just don't forget to check out, like, something like this, where it's like, you want to hear them, like, just raw from back in the day, and you could tell that LJ is younger. I like that. Like, I like that you can actually tell, because his voice has only gotten better, and he's got more grit now. But, like, he doesn't scream, but he yells his head off in this album, and I love that, because, like, Terminator in particular, I can't help but to just enjoy that song when it's on. Anyway.
A few moments later.
Every once in a while, at the silver lining, or whatever he said. Why did my mic twist?
Okay, so next would be 5, but this is going to be my side note. Southside Double Wide Acoustic Live, 5 out of 10. So this is moving up from the 4 out of 10s. And what did I say about it? Big fan of acoustic Sevendust, but this isn't as good as it could have been. Part of the set list works, part of it doesn't. But that's to be expected, I guess, from a live album at some point. But beautiful Skeleton song, Trust, are the standouts. And it's a good album. Like, I just had never heard it, so I'm like, this is a good opportunity just to kind of hear it and just kind of pay attention and rank it, I guess. So the real number 5, Blackout the Sun. 5 out of 10. And what did I say?
I was almost kind of worried about this one for you. I'm like, hey, he's going to put Blackout the Sun solo. I don't know, but no.
So since it's 5 out of 10, definitely split on this one. This album has great highs with Decay, Mountain, and Nobody Wants It. I think those songs are great. But when the filler hits, it is blatant filler. And that's all I really said.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Well, my next one is, which surprised me, and this I'll just reveal, this is the one that I actually moved up today. The one we've been most opposite on so far is All I See Is War. I think All I See Is War is, like, almost a Kill the Flaw 2. What was my note? I think I said, I put way better than I remember it being when it came out. Some of their best melodic tracks. LJ vocals are on point, like, so we just keep both noting that. But like, I think this album is, like, one of his best for, like, how he sings the tracks and how, like, just, it's a mixture. It's a melodic. I think it's centered on Sevendust being melodic, but, like, good melodic where they have, there's heavy tracks there, but each song is kind of a mixture of both. And I think that's where Sevendust kind of shines. Yeah, I think maybe it's just one of those things where it's one of those albums just like we talked about with Metallica, where sometimes albums just need time. And I always think back to Old Head talking about Saint Anger, where it's like, just was like, what the heck is this? And he didn't know what to think when it came out. And I think that's the beauty of music. Sometimes you just have to listen to something at the right time. Or maybe you're going through something and something hits you, because I feel like we all need music. Like, we all need, like, whether you're going through a hard time or if you're going through a good time, like, especially when you're going through a good time, I feel like music can just, it's like magic almost. It just sounds better sometimes. Like, bands just, I don't know. It's interesting because, like, and I feel like when I went after the initial, like, I went back to it and it was better than I remember. I had to listen to it again, and it was one of those things where I was over it because I just listened to it. So you do that thing where it's like, oh, I just heard this, so like, but then I listened to it again this morning, and I'm like, I'm not saying it's one of their best, but it's just like so underrated. But I think we're on number 4.
Or Cold Day Memory. 5 out of 10.
So wow, you definitely he's like you definitely liked this one way more than me then.
What I said was truly a mid Sevendust album, so 5 out of 10 still. Better than most of the weaker Sevendust albums. But it still doesn't escape the ties to sounding like bland radio rock at a lot of points.
Right.
Karma and Better Place are amazing, and LJ's vocals are great.
Always as great as you.
I have to add it.
All right, I guess we're ready for my number 4, Animosity. I feel like Animosity is an album that maybe back in the day, I remember it's one of those, like, probably one of the first times that I listened to a whole album, just like I said with other albums. Very memorable cover art. I really like it. I think it speaks to what it is. Like, the cover art speaks, like...
It's probably the
what,
worst
like,
art, but...
I mean, I'm saying that I like it because it's, like, the environment that the kid is in or whatever, like, speaks anger, but also, like, if we get melodic in here, it'll surprise you. Like, because, like, I don't know, like, it had a mixture. And what I ended up writing about it is that this is in context of, like, this is the third one that you're ever going into. Quality is off-putting at first. Because I don't know if they switched labels. I don't know anything about that. But, like, Home is such good quality compared to, like, you jump into Animosity, and then it almost has that vibe that I'm talking about where it gets a little more underwater. So, to me, not a great start. Like, but it's one of those situations where... You know the feeling. You sit in an album listening to it and you just get used to it. So, Animosity grew on me because of that. The quality at first feels off compared.
It is a different producer.
Okay, so then it makes sense because the vibe is suddenly like, oh, we're a little bit worse quality as for production sound. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, so this is technically when they first... timeline wise hit like let's get some like melodic vocals in their stuff, more so than the one before. But yeah, I think it's way better than I remember, because I remember there being a time where I said like Animosity's kind of disappointing, and it grew on me, so it did its job. I guess.
So my number 3, Kill the Flaw.
Ooh, okay.
7 out of 10. So we're moving. That's moving way up.
So this is definitely a thing where, because of the journey, it got debunked out of your favorite. Because I remember there being a time where we both agreed that it was number one.
It's shifted so much.
Yeah, yeah, I get it.
My notes, one of the most fantastic alt metal albums ever. Letters is probably my favorite Sevendust song.
Yeah.
And that's straightforward. It's great. I mean, there's nothing but praise for this.
Like, praise the song, yeah.
What?
But another situation, it's like I want to talk about it, but I'll just have to wait till I get to it. But my next one is Home. This one, for it to be that high and be their second album in freaking 99, which is crazy that, like, they pretty much rushed right into Home after. The difference between you go from 97 to this is just like, okay, like this had to be some people's first, like when it first came out, this had to be like, whoa, what is this band? In the first one, okay, the only one I have check marked in here is Denial, because it's just so, everyone knows it's so good, and love that music video. But if you're sensitive to flashing lights and stuff, don't watch it. But I just, it's such a great. I tried to watch. I don't know if I hit all of them, but I did do kind of like a whole night of like listening or watching all of their music videos again. Just there's some weird ones. There's like some really old ones that I was like, I didn't know this existed or whatever. But I remember specifically the Denial one being that way, and that part where the drummer is upside down and there's people dancing or whatever. Like it's so weird. I will say this. These top three all had potential at some point in time to be number one. So I would actually say I almost made Home number one. Just because it's just that good to me. When it comes to like older, but quality is really good. Heavy Sevendust that sounds so good in beats. Like it's so good. I don't know. I really like it. And maybe in the future it'd be lower. I don't know. I really like it's interesting because I had moments in this whole process of listening to like Truth Killer or something and then seeing like, okay, but what does Home sound like after all that? And it's so weird how when you look back on older Sevendust after listening to newer Sevendust, you visualize the differences. The evolution, if you might say, of Sevendust. Like, this is so different versus, like, Kill the Flaw or whatever. Even though, like I said, they've always had this heavy vibe to them, but, like, just the rhythms and, even lyrically, like, I feel like they were angrier back in the day. They've definitely lightened up a little bit on the anger. But talk about what a great, like, for a second album, if we're just talking about for a second album, then you might just use fantastic as a word. But not my favorite cover art at all. Just like, it's just kind of gross looking.
Number 2, Seasons.
What? I forget. This is one of those situations of like, I forgot you haven't said Seasons yet. Just like you probably in Metallica hadn't, like you probably forgot I had not said Saint Anger yet. Wow. So
I mean,
number 2 is not where I expected that to be.
All I put was great album. The best description is consistent. Broken Down and Enemy are some of my favorite Sevendust songs.
See, and like I said, I wanted it to be higher.
So how I think of this is like, I think it's just an album you're just gonna so happen to like. Like, I don't know any other explanation. Like, because with Home, you could just so happen to like Home, and it's just really good. You know what I'm like? I'm just saying that because both Seasons and Home are albums that have like a lot of songs that are basically the same song. Just being real, like I mean, There's variety in both albums, but for the most part, it's just a ton of songs that are basically the same thing.
Yeah, similar riffs and stuff. I get what you
So
mean.
you just prefer Home, and then I prefer Seasons, which makes sense because what you'd said was this is just a bunch of melodic songs. Like so,
And
that's what I want.
I think your
That's what I like.
list, I think your list is definitely is showing like now that we're up to like number 2, like it's definitely showing like okay, I love melodic Sevendust, but like when they hit a sweet spot of like heavy, then the ones that are balanced for me is what I'm gonna love. And then you're just gonna like, and especially with like time travelers and bonfires, like just proof that like you're gonna prefer the softer side of Sevendust. I mean it makes sense on like our tastes. So it's interesting. But then that also is like, man, all I see is War for You though, like, and that's a pretty melodic album. So are we on my number 2?
Yeah.
This one is almost stings to even read it because this one definitely fought for the number 1 spot. It fought hard because this one is probably my most fond memory of listening to for the first time back in the day. And it comes down to the album art, it comes down to like everything, but Black Out the Sun I think is it had to be in top 3 at least because at a time I would have said like if before we did this whole process if someone were to ask me what is your favorite Sevendust album, first thing on top of your head, it would have rather been like Kill the Flaw or Black Out the, but I definitely probably would have just went straight to Black Out the Sun, like I just cuz this one, like, I could probably understand how someone would be like, why does this sound like so different? Like it, and I think that might be why. Down to the album art, down to everything. I hate using this word because it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying dark in the way of like that it's a dark album because lyrically I'm probably lost on what a lot of the songs sound like. I mean, what the song means. But like I mean, I'm talking like you get that intro of Memory, and like this is where they really started using like the ambient sound. Like this is like what I remember like when we saw them live. I'm pretty sure it might have been Memory or something, but just a build up ambient sound. I love when they do this and they use it right. Till Death is just like I love it. Like that's one of my favorite songs. I'm not as big of a fan as Mountain as you. I think it just by the time I get maybe to the middle of the song, I'm tired of it. Like I don't know. Cold as War is a great lyrical like LJ just spitting. Black Out the Sun is obviously great. Nobody Wants It is just like we're going in the gravel heavy. Like Decay has probably always been one of my number 1 songs. It is probably one of those things just like Denial and Decay are probably both not overplayed, but I've heard them so many times now that I'm like, okay, moving on. But I did listen to them again in like my beats, and it's the best version of it. Dark AM, fantastic. Got a Feeling is pretty good, but the only one for some reason I don't know why the only one I have check marked is Murder Bar. Nobody talks about Murder Bar, and I think like that should have been. It's a perfect like if you want to like edit a playlist where you have the first song on your playlist and like to build up to the rest of your playlist, Murder Bar I think is, I'm sure they've done it at some point, but that is like that should be like the first song they build up to live. It's not a go-to for like if you want melodic Sevendust. Like it's not that.
And that might be why I'm mixed on it because, like we said, like I'm more into the melodic
Yeah.
stuff more often than not. So it's like that tells me it's probably half and half. Like,
So
maybe.
drum
But I
roll,
love
what
Heaven.
is your number one Sevendust album?
Animosity.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, I almost could swear I remember like you maybe at a time. I don't know, unless I'm just remembering it wrong, but I definitely would have expected number one. I feel like I think out of memory, I feel like I just remember you not liking it as much, maybe in the past.
Well,
Unless
okay.
it just grew
So
on you, or
this contradicts what you said earlier. Well, what my notes say, which it's my opinion, but like perfectly produced and perfectly performed.
it's really good. I mean, it had potential for my
Because
number
you had
one.
said like, oh, the production's a little worse.
Just when
But
you go
then
from
to
one to
me,
the
I'm
other,
like,
like
if I say perfectly produced, I'm like, yeah, and I did listen to some of it today, even. So I'm like, yeah. Angel's Son, probably my favorite Sevendust song, and just about every song on Animosity is good in its own way. I would say, in
yeah.
terms of what you would go to listen to them. I mean, I'd say it's a perfect album to show somebody like just as an introduction. I think.
Hmm.
I'd say basically. And then Time Travelers and Bonfires is above that. So that's like my
Okay.
actual like number one. So I guess you could say they're like tied or whatever. I just went ahead and ranked that because I'm like, I just love acoustic Sevendust a lot because that's going to be the most melodic you can go, and it showcases LJ's voice the most.
Hmm.
Great, and it has great production, and it's I don't know. So Animosity and Time Travelers and Bonfires, I'd say, are both not just like my favorite Sevendust albums. They're some of my favorite albums of all time. I mean,
Yeah.
This went from like way like me really not liking the albums to like this is some of
Right.
my favorite stuff ever made. Like I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, I wouldn't have expected this, but yeah, I mean, I could we'd still agree that it's just a really solid album. And like I said, I was completely surprised with Animosity, just like expecting to go into it like this is probably going to be middle of the road or something, and ended up being one of my favorites. Just because I literally say like not a great start to me. I mean, it does have a great start, but the album, or it has a good start, but the album just gets better, and that's what you want when you're listening to a whole album. Is like if it can get just better, like while you know
And it's
in the
interesting
process
that you
of
say
listening.
it gets better and better because literally, basically, the whole last half of the album, all the way to Angel's Son being my favorite, is all like on a playlist somewhere.
Nice.
Like,
Well, it's probably obvious now what ended up, I would say, keeping the throne. Because I was wondering, would this get dethroned? Would it not? I feel like it's one of those albums. Like it's. I still wouldn't say it's the ultimate go-to because I would still say I'd probably still rather throw on Black Out the Sun or something, but not necessarily because this one has all the flavors. It's almost like this one just kind of almost all of their flavors in one album. But Kill the Flaw, first album that I ever bought, and Ryan remembers that. Like I actually bought the CD, and it was like the cool little sleeve thing. I was wondering though, because I'll just say this: I listened to this album a lot in my car around the time of like having a past relationship. So I was wondering if I would have that printed on my brain when I. Nothing with that ended on like a super bad note or anything, so I mean, I can say that. Um, but like I listened to it a lot going to see this person. It was just back whenever like I had a different car and listened to just CDs because I didn't have. This was at a time where I didn't have Spotify yet. I probably like it more than I ever have. Just because maybe now I can appreciate, like, I mean, obviously I appreciated the sound back then, but then just compared to everything else they have, like I said, 2 and 3 are like, these top 3 are basically even, but if we're talking about, like, if something had to be number 1, like, Kill the Flaw also coming down to just, I mean, this doesn't make or break an album, but it just also happens to be their absolute best album art. We've talked about that before. Very colorful, I think there's like a lot of meaning behind the animals. You hit just great way to start. Like Thank You is just great song. Love seeing that behind the scenes thing that they released online a long time ago. They got inspired by Pink Floyd with like the kids in the background thing part on Thank You. They actually hired like I don't know, middle schoolers or something to sing in the background. Is a really cool part. Death Dance is one of my favorites. Just the way it starts, it's just so good.
Same here. I'll say, yeah.
Brigette's good. Letters is just absolutely great. Like it just literally as when I'm looking through the out like as a consistent like hardly any filler. It's just a solid album from start to finish. I'm not saying it's perfect, but Letters and Cease and Desist and Not Today is great. Then you just hit us with Chop, and then Kill the Flaw is good, and then Silly Beast is good. Slave the Prey is the way that the album ends is a great way to end it. Like, I don't know. I just think
that's probably why
it didn't end up getting dethroned.
That's probably why I pretty much like considered it like, wow, this is their best, because it's just really,
consistent.
There's no filler, really. Like, I mean, but that's just comes with the ranking. Like, if you have to kind of start judging stuff more harshly. So I'd say like Time Travelers and Bonfires, yeah, but like Animosity, Seasons, Kill the Flaw are literally just as even as it gets with like this is really good.
Like,
I mean,
just like me. Just an example of like that is like Death Dance. It's probably one of the best on the album, like, because you're never gonna hear a riff like that. Like just that but then you get this little like these little notes in there that kind of sound like I'll just call them sparkly, like I don't know, like it's like almost like stars or something. Like I don't know, they just add so many themes, like I don't know, and then Cell J's just plastic scars or whatever, and just I don't know. It's you're never like, oh man, and whatever he says on like I think he said silent screams. The silent screams, and so the bass sort of like drops during I don't even know how to explain how they made that sound, but that album does it throughout the whole thing. Just sounds that I haven't heard yet from them. And there was a couple moments like that in the Truth Killer album that, you know, it didn't end up being one of my favorites, but I felt like it was better than I expected because it had sounds in there that I did not expect. But yeah, Kill the Flaw, what I predicted to be number 1, but I actually did go into it thinking it's probably going to be Black Out the Sun. And it got close. Like, it Black Out the Sun and Kill the Flaw are the ones that I was like, I'm worried about them being burnt out. And I think just out of pure enjoyment from start to finish, it's just Kill the Flaw. But barely. Like, I mean, it's so even.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like, just like what a weird comparison, but like, kind of like we said with the Beatles, like, Sevendust is another band that I don't think has like, they don't have like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that's like so stacked it's like crazy, that they never have reached that. I mean, at least for me, but like, it's just kind of like how some bands just don't quite make the, like, they don't quite reach that. But
Depends
like,
on what you're looking for. I mean, I feel like bigger fans, I feel like, we're big enough fans of them, but like there's got to be somebody out there that maybe thinks like Kill the Flaw is a perfect album, or I'm just, you can't. This is one of those bands where it's like you can't go and listen to anything else and then expect this to be Shakespeare. Because like I said, in the process, once you're into listening to Sevendust, it's like you kind of it's like I have this realization of like they're one of the best bands like
yeah,
out there, but you have to
yeah.
get used to their flavor when you're listening to them. I felt like if you're gonna listen to Sevendust, then just dive head first and just listen to everything, because it's like that's the same exact feeling I have with Chevelle, where it's like nobody is gonna go into them and be like, "Yeah, this is the best thing ever." It's not, but once you're listening to them only, then they're like one of the best. It's super weird. I never know how to explain that to people, but that's one of
Like,
that's one of like the maturity growth sort of things I've had with music in my life, in my brain, is like that realization of like not everything is for everybody, but once I am listening to a band consistently a lot, and that's how I consume music anyway, I get into bands and I listen to like basically only them for a little while, like just going back and forth to that. And you run into burnout sometimes. Sometimes I can accidentally do that. But but in that moment, in the middle of doing that, it's the best band. Like that's just like and that's with any band that I get into. Like, so like and and no, I didn't necessarily have the feeling of that with Metallica, but there could be an argument for like Metallica could be just like the best band of all time because of what they've done. Like just as a general, but
yeah, I do wish I was a bigger fan, but just how much of a fan I am is just kind of where I sit. Like, where I think, like, oh, the Black Album's really good, and Master of Puppets is really good, and then everything else is just kind of like, okay.
well,
Like,
I'm not going to reveal it here, but I'm very excited to go to do the next one because it's going to be totally different than this, and so it'll definitely be like I am a fan of that band, but it'll be the same feeling of Metallica, not necessarily different vibe, but it'll be the same feeling in the way of like I will find out more about them. Like I'll actually listen to everything because I don't think I've listened to absolutely every song, so that'll be exciting. And going back to more of a classic sound, an older sound. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. But I'll let you wrap it up.
but yeah, uh, yeah. So that was our Sevendust ranking, another band ranking. I enjoy the heck out of doing this stuff because I love rankings. I love lists. I'm just the list guy. um, so actually doing them, I love it to death. So anyway, guys, you can check out Trav on his channel, Trav tries.
Subscribe to Ryan's channel if you haven't yet, and like the video. And especially like if you somehow found this and you've never heard Sevendust in your life, I don't know how you made it to this part, but check them out. Because you're probably, if you like it, I would say if you, not even just like genre wise or specific, like I would say like if you like heavy music at all, check them out and see what you think. Like I would actually throw that at like anybody. I would even throw it at Old Head. Like I've always wanted to be like, what do you think about something like this?
Yeah, I'm excited for them to get to Sevendust, like if it ever happens. But
Right.
he said it was on the list. I think it was on the list somewhere, but
That'd be cool.
we'll see. But yep.
All right, guys. Bye.
So reach down.